Often given the name sport models by crews and rail fans, the DNRGW K28s have been a staple on the Silverton branch of the DNRGW since the early 1920s, with their iconic front-mounted air compressor, outside frame design, and their distinguishing whistle. A K28 isn't hard to miss. Today we'll be uncovering the rich history of the Denver and Rio Grande Western K28s. At the turn of the 20th century, the Denver and Rio Grande boasted a narrow-gauge empire that encompassed a large swath of south-central and southern Colorado, as well as northern New Mexico. However, many of the locomotives employed by the Rio Grande weren't up to the task of pulling the heavier and heavier trains. At the time, the DNRG utilized 280 consolidations and 460 10-wheelers for the most part. In 1903, the railroad purchased Class 125 locomotives from the Baldwin Locomotive Works. Later, these locomotives will be reclassified as K27, with K representing the locomotive's wheel arrangement, Mikado, and 27 representing the locomotive's tractive effort in thousands of pounds, which was 27,000. The locomotives were heavier and larger than their predecessors. They also used an outside frame. In an outside frame, the locomotive's wheels are inside the frame, the drive rods and counter weights being mounted on the outside. The rods are attached to the axles, with the counterweights being used to offset vibration and speed. The engines were heavier and more powerful than the smaller locomotives they replaced. They also got the nickname of mud hens, as they seemed to waddle as they went along the track. The design proved to be successful, and the railroad sought to purchase more locomotives of similar design. In 1922, the railroad approached the American Locomotive Company to produce an upgraded model. In 1923, 10 locomotives numbered 470 through 479 arrived from Schenectady, New York. These new models were classified as K28. Unfortunately, the lightweight rail and deferred track maintenance required extensive track improvements. The first K28 train arrived in Durango in the summer of 1924. Crews liked the new locomotives because they were reliable and easy to maintain. They could travel at higher speeds if track conditions allowed. They were given the name Sport Model. As Michael J. Wilson from Trains.com said about the K28s, as classic as the 67 Chevrolet Travail SS and as smooth as a Rolls Royce, they pushed on through the years and became the primary motive power on the Silverton. In 1942, the U.S. Army appropriated 7 out of the 10 K28s and were sent up to the White Pass in Yukon and Alaska. The WPNYR was a crucial supply line for the U.S. Army's Alaska Highway Construction Project, which was strategically important for the defense of Alaska. These locomotives were renumbered as USA 250 to USA 256. In 1945, 6 out of the 7 K28s sent up to Alaska were barged back to Seattle and scrapped, with 472 being sent to Ogden, with it also being scrapped. The 3 remaining K28s that were still in Colorado continued to serve the Silverton branch. They were the prime motive power for the San Juan Express until it was retired in 1951. After World War II, America was obsessed with Western movies, and many Westerns were shot on the Silverton branch. The new attention from Hollywood brought in an influx of tourists to the Silverton branch. The K28s were the primary motive power of the San Juan Express until that train was discontinued in 1951. In 1947, the DNRGW launched the Silverton, a summer-only daily passenger service from Durango to Silverton. The modest effort to attract tourist riders proved successful, and to deal with freight losses, the train operated as a mixed freight. Many people argue, including me, that the Silverton branch wouldn't have existed if it weren't for this Hollywood attention. By the 1960s, the DNRGW no longer wanted to operate the remote Silverton branch or its narrow-gauge tourist trains. Thus, they filed a petition to the Interstate Commerce Commission for abandonment. The ICC denied the petition because the route was determined to be extremely important for regional tourist backing. As a result, the DNRGW reluctantly made investments in its branch line. Silverton operated as a dedicated steam passenger service throughout the 1970s. In 1979, the Silverton branch was purchased by Charles Bradshaw, a Florida citrus grower. K-28 continued to operate for the Durango-Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. In 1999, 476 was taken out of service because its boiler ticket expired. In October 2017, Joe Rubino of the Denver Post wrote that 476 return to service was delayed by commercial side effects of the 2002 Missionary Ridge fire. In June of 2016, the 416 fire started around 10 a.m. local time, about 10 miles north of Durango and west of Highway 550, adjacent to the tracks of the Durango and Silverton. The fire would last until July 31st after burning 52,778 acres. Over 1,300 homes and businesses were forced to evacuate. Luckily, no buildings were destroyed, though businesses suffered economically. The fire also forced the closure of the Durango and Silverton Purgatory Ski Resort and San Juan National Forest. The Durango and Silverton would be blamed for the fire, as the most likely reason is hot cinders coming from the smokestack. But why didn't that happen much earlier? It's likely attributed to the drier climate of today. In 2020, the Durango and Silverton converted its largest locomotive, 493, a K37, from coal burning to oil. 473 will be converted in 2021, with 476 and 478 following suit. Eventually, 481 was the only coal-fired steam locomotive left on the line. That locomotive has since been converted, marking the end of an era on the Silverton branch. In February of 2023, the Durango and Silverton hosted its annual winter photography special. The railroad backdated 476 to a 1970s appearance and stenciled Rio Grande on the tender. In October of the same year, 476 would haul the railroad's annual fall photography special with a similar theme. Again in 2025, 476 would haul a photo freight for the winter photography special. Originally, 481 was supposed to pull the train, but a hotbox had put it out of service. Today, the K-28s continue to do the exact same thing they did over 100 years ago. The story of the K-28 is a remarkable success story. It's rare to have a locomotive built for a line still preserved running on the same narrow ribbon of rail for over 100 years. But the K-28 is a rare example. Thank you for watching this video on the Rio Grande K-28. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in another one.